Howdy, friends. Welcome to Repertoire. This is a show about the ideas, experiences, philosophies, and rituals that shape who we are as chefs and cooks. I'm Sammy Mansour, Michelin Award-winning chef, cookbook author, and food activist. My life revolves around food and cooking, and I love geeking out about the craft and the culture. In each episode, I travel somewhere new to sit down with chefs and food personalities on their turf for honest, unfiltered conversations. We talk shop, we go deep, we cook. Today, I'm in the Eastlake neighborhood of Seattle. Some of my favorite bites around here include the sustainably sourced and masterfully prepared omakase at Sushi Capo Tamura, and the handmade pastas at Serafina, especially the seasonally set cavatelli and blissful riffs on carbonara, all of which are on the Apple Maps city guide list of where my guest today loves to eat in his current hometown of Seattle. Kenji López-Alt is a New York Times bestselling author, the mind behind the Food Lab, and a James Beard Award winner who's made science feel deliciously fun and rewarding. He's a dad, a knife nerd, and the co-host of the Recipe Podcast. He's someone who changed the way millions of people cook, not by handing out instructions, but by peeling back the layers and showing us why things work the way they do. Kenji doesn't just write recipes, he dismantles them, tests them, rebuilds them, and makes them better. He's the guy who taught us how to reverse-sear a steak and why we should slather our Thanksgiving turkeys in mayo. His willingness to share his methodology changed the way I develop my recipes, and in many ways, I'm a better cook because of his contributions to the culinary landscape. Kenji, I am absolutely jazzed to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. We've known each other for many years, at least as like online and phone acquaintances.
Yeah.
And we haven't spent I don't think we've ever cooked together.
No,
but we go back a ways.
I know, and well, I feel honored that you always gave me that that time of day, like that. I've just been an admirer ever since like we became acquainted in Boston, and anytime I've ever reached out or said hi or asked you a question, you've been like instantly responsive, and I'm like, man, what a great guy.
Yeah, well, I hope other people feel that way.
Hey, we do the best we can, man.
You're the only person I ever respond to.
Yes. So, dude, jumping into it, man. There's so much to talk about, but like off the top of my dome, I saw recently like you became immortalized as a Simpson.
Oh, yeah, which was crazy because I've watched The Simpsons since like the Tracy Ullman show days, like since their inception, before they were even an actual TV show on their own. They were a short in the Tracy Ullman show. So no, I grew up with The Simpsons, and for me, getting Simpsonized and appearing even in the very background of a Simpson episode is like the greatest honor I could have.
You actually got Simpsonized. Like, okay, so I paid somebody on Etsy years ago to like take pictures of my family and make like a family portrait of all of us like standing on the beach in like the Outer Banks as like a gift to my parents for their like 40th anniversary, because it was during the pandemic. We couldn't get together to celebrate, and I was like, let's have a family photo of us from the Outer Banks, like we all got together and get it like framed for them, and Simpsonized.
Yeah.
And that was really cool, and a lot of people do that. So
was this like long hair, bearded Sammy?
Yes.
Okay.
So and so many people have done that, right? And there used to be the app that you could kind of Simpsonize.
Right.
So the fact that you actually got Simpsonized by the cartoonists.
Yeah, well, it was me and Deb Perlman, my partner for the Recipe Podcast. We both got Simpsonized, and we're in a poster in the background of one scene that I was walking by. But.
And it was you contributed a recipe.
Yeah, the episode is called The Stew of Violence, and in that episode, Homer gets involved with Fat Tony, played by Tony Montana, gets involved by Fat Tony the mob boss, and discovers that there is a recipe for this Prussian stew that brings everyone together at the end. And so, yeah, I wrote the recipe for that that Prussian stew, which is essentially like a take on a sauerbraten. It's like a sort of sweet and sour pork stew.
And the recipe is available for
The recipe is,
all of
yeah.
us. We can get it. And
Oh yeah,
that?
if you
All right.
Google the stew of violence, the recipe will show. You can either get the version that I actually wrote, or you can find like a blow up of the. There's a scene in which Fat Tony is holding the recipe in his hand, and if you zoom in on it, you can actually see the full instructions.
I wonder how random this conversation will be for you because of all the things I gravitate toward. But I also saw that you recently went to a Buc-ee's for the first time ever, and I remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
magic of my first Buc-ee's experience.
Yes. So my friend Edgar Meyer, who is one of the great bass players and composers of the world. He's a multi-Grammy award winning bass player. But I was down in Tennessee, and he told me, we connect over food and music, and so he told me, like, Kenji, I got to take you. This is going to be one of the culinary experiences of your life. I got to take you to a Buc-ee's. And so yeah, we stopped at a Buc-ee's, which is it's a gas station chain that is now expanding, I think. But you go there and there's like 432 pumps or something like that on that outside. It's insane. And then the inside is like the size of like a Walmart. And it's like the biggest gas station convenience store you've ever seen. And the thing that he wanted me to try was, I think they're called Buc-ee balls, which look like I think they're supposed to look like beaver shit. Am I allowed to curse on this show?
Hell yeah,
Okay.
dude.
I think they're supposed to look like beaver shit, and they come in various flavors, but it was I think it was like the salty caramel flavor. But they have like barbecue. They've got
Oh yeah, dude.
They got like a jerky bar,
the wall of jerky.
Yeah.
Love it. It's a cultural experience, right?
Right.
And the thing that really made me love the place was that the kids that were working in the little food stands, because there's kind of like satellite kitchens all throughout it, and they do different dishes. These kids were like singing along to the music, and they were like whistling while they worked, busier than shit. And it was like, this is like a cool kitchen to work in.
Yeah, it seemed like a
they're
fun place.
enjoying it.
What's funny, I was at the there's a supermarket a couple blocks away down in the water called Pete's. And I was there like a couple weeks ago. And the two people in line in front of me at the checkout counter, one girl was wearing a Buc-ee's baseball cap, and the guy behind her was wearing a pair of Buc-ee's shorts. It was so funny because I had just been introduced to Buc-ee's like a month before that. And then these two people in line like noticed that they were each wearing Buc-ee's things. And it felt like people finding out that like you're fans of the same indie band,
Yeah. Another thing I think that we both, it's kind of cultish that we both indulge in is the Duke's mayo.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a fan of the Duke's mayo?
I'm a fan of mayo variety. So in my home right now, I've got Best Foods, which is Hellmann's on the East Coast. I've got Duke's. I've got Kewpie. I've got Molly Baz's new mayo, Ayo. Have you tried that?
No.
It's really good. Yeah, we can try some later. It's actually like, I'm usually not into like influencer products, but this stuff is really good.
Nice. What's the oil?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not sure. But no, it's great flavor. But I've got those four mayos, and I've got I must have some generic store brand mayo in there also. But yeah, no, I'm a mayo fan in general. But Duke's has that sort of extra creamy quality to it. It's like it's what I reach for. Well, we're coming up on tomato season. Actually, by the time this episode is out, it's probably in the height of tomato season.
Yeah.
My trick for a mayo sandwich is you put the bread under a broiler, like white bread. You put it under a broiler, so you toast just one side, and that's the inside of the sandwich. So you spread the mayo on that. So it's still got that kind of like soft, squishy, that whole texture that you want in that kind of tomato sandwich, like the white bread and tomato bit. But you get that little bit of that tiny sort of layer of texture and the sort of protection that the toasting gives you, so that it doesn't get too soggy by the end of it.
Black pepper?
I just do salt.
Salt, like kosher or like crunchy sea salt?
Kosher. I mean, it's going to melt on the tomato and sort of soak into the mayo. Yeah, I just do kosher salt. Yeah.
I think one of the things that, from my observation, not to like speak for you,
Mhm.
but one of the things that I think makes you such a great cook and is that you love to eat food.
I do.
And because of that, you're ever curious about like, how do I make this exactly how I want it?
Mhm.
And you have a great palate. And it's just the little touches that you can do as a chef to be like, how do I just kind of like, all right, I want that gummy white bread squish, but it also like, I just don't want this thing falling apart in my hand.
Right. Yeah.
And it's so brilliant to just toast, like just dry toast the inside, like one, and that's, I love it. I can't wait to try that. It is tomato sandwich season officially where I live in
Oh,
Charleston,
okay.
right? You know?
Lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, look, it's end of July right now, so good tomatoes. I think the best tomatoes are out on the shelves in September. What do you think?
Yeah. Late August through mid September, I think are the best.
They
Yeah.
just start to
In
like.
Seattle, we're seeing a couple in the farmers markets now, but yeah, they're still early though.
What's your favorite tomato variety? Do you have one?
I like a good like brandy wine, like like one of those nice uh greenish red deep or like a purple Cherokee.
Yeah.
Like those. But yeah, for well, it also depends on what you're doing with them. But yeah, for a tomato sandwich, I like something that's a lot of flesh, very small seed pockets,
Yeah.
and nice and juicy.
Who is this?
Oh, this one is Gohan.
Gohan.
My cats are Tamago and Gohan, which
Oh.
means
Are they brothers?
egg and rice. They're sisters.
Sisters, even better. What are
Yeah.
the babies?
Yeah, calicos are all female, always.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a recessive female genetic trait.
So I have a cat that's about this size, and she's a calico. She's a blue cream though,
Okay.
and her name is Midge. We call her Meep, and she just showed up in our yard last October, like 13-ounce, flea-ridden little baby. We found her in our lemongrass plant, and we took her in, and she's officially a member of the home,
Nice.
in the family, and she's amazing.
Nice.
And she's this big, so I always thought she's kind of small compared to.
Well, these cats are how old are they now? I think like 8 months now. Yeah, they're
Same as Meep.
okay. Yeah. I got so her. I have a friend who works at a vet clinic, and they found a female cat on the street that had a litter of kittens that was pregnant, and so she had a litter of kittens, and so yeah, he I adopted two of them. He still has the mother, and he's our cat sitter, so they get to see her whenever I travel, and it's always a nice reunion.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Man, I love pets so much. I love cats and dogs and well, animals in general, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just love animals and have so much
yeah. We have a little dog here also who isn't in the house right now, but yeah, sleeping at night is it's like yeah, five bodies on a bed.
Are the cats allowed on the counter in the kitchen?
So we have a dog, and so when the dog is in the apartment, the cat's food has to stay up at the counter because the dog will eat it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, they're not only allowed on the counter, but they sometimes are required to go on the counter to eat. I try and keep them off the cutting board, but this is a home, not a restaurant. So
yeah, dude, like seriously. You know what? On that note, we're talking about cats, but we're talking about at home cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And people watching you cook at home and having, their take on sanitation and cleanliness. And I think that premise is how this subject I'm going to ask you about came to be so popular.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like a hot take right now.
Okay.
Do you wash your chicken?
My answer to that is it depends on what I'm doing with it.
So,
For any kind of sort of Western, sort of European or American style cooking, I don't wash it. If I'm roasting my chicken, if I'm going to be pan searing some chicken breast, if I'm grilling some chicken, I don't wash it. I think well, first of all, like the difference between washing and not washing, like is for those types is mainly down to how it's going to come out when you cook, because you don't want to be adding extra water,
moisture.
Yeah. It takes a lot of energy to sort of evaporate moisture from the surface of meats, and any energy you're robbing you're using to evaporate moisture is being taken away from good browning, or good crisping. And so you don't want to add moisture to your meat. And the science actually shows that when you wash your chicken in the sink, you're more likely to spread bacteria around your around your kitchen, let it splash up onto your counter, than you are to actually sort of, you know, clean anything that doesn't actually need cleaning off the chicken anyway. So it's worse in almost every way to wash a chicken. The exception for me.
Oh wait, so why do you think that do you think people wash it because they think it's a sanitary step?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That I don't know. Yeah. That's my take. Where they think, oh, it's been sprayed with antibiotics, or they've
Oh.
got these false ideas in their heads. But
Because for me, I'm always like it. So if I buy air chilled chicken, which is my preference,
yeah.
there's really no reason to wash it. And for me, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I'm rinsing it off because I want to get that viscous
Oh, like
liquid.
if it's been like cryovac or it's under like
Yeah.
plastic.
I want to get the
Sure.
viscous liquid off and I pat it dry.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I prefer air chilled for a handful of reasons, one of which it's a great litmus test. Like if you buy air chilled chicken, I can guarantee that it was humanely raised. And it's
Depends on your
also
definition of humane, but yeah, but better raised than most other chickens.
right, right. Well, the companies that invest in that kind of
Right.
butchering, I mean, it costs a significant amount
Oh yeah,
more to air chill. So by standards, they're already doing it better.
for sure.
Right. So,
For sure.
but you're right. You're right. So it depends on your definition of humane, but I think it's a great litmus test.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, water chilled chicken in general is going to be harder to get sort of really nice and flavorful. You're good when you water chill the chicken. Yeah, you're kind of soaking the skin. You're adding liquid to it, so you're paying more because there's water weight added to the
Yep.
chicken.
Yeah.
And then it's also harder to cook. So even if the price of air chilled chicken is a little more, you're I feel that you're getting that back in terms of sort of flavor and ease of preparation. The time I do wash my chicken is when I'm preparing it for a stir fry.
Okay.
So chicken or beef or pork, I found that when you wash your meat and not just sort of like rinse it, but like, when you cut it up, with cube it or slice it or sliver it, whatever you're going to do for your stir fry, when you very vigorously wash it, like you're imagine that it's in a washing machine, you're trying to get a stain out of your clothes. That sort of mechanical action of washing, the kneading and the massaging and the squeezing, goes a long way towards tenderizing the meat. It's like one of the most important steps for me now, that I've tested it a lot. That if you want that sort of really tender, velvety texture to your meat, putting it in a strainer, washing it under running water, and sort of really squeezing it and wringing it, actually tenderizes the meat a ton. And it also makes it easier for the meat to then absorb any flavors
Okay.
from a marinade.
So I do that with some things, and it feels maybe just like this innate, like, I cook very instinctually. I love to eat as well. And I think that my food would be as good as it is. Like however you think my food is as good as it is because I love to eat.
Yeah.
And I'm very hands-on and intuitive with
Mhm.
cooking with all five senses, plus really valuing, obviously like touch, taste, sight, smell, but also valuing the brain, right?
Mhm.
Like valuing the gut, but valuing the brain because like your instincts change with the more science you learn.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everything changes the way you react to situations. Yeah. I think the more knowledge you have, the more sort of an informed decision you can make. Yeah. I mean, I think of it a lot like learning a neighborhood. Where the first time you go there, if you want to get to the post office, like you look at the turn by turn directions on your phone, right? And that's just like one path to get to the post office. But the more time you spend there, the more you get to know, like, the more you get to learn about it, and then you can choose your own path to get somewhere, or you can pick a completely different area to go. So you can start at the same place, and the more you
Right.
know about a neighborhood, the easier it becomes for you to travel to where you want to go exactly. And that's for me, that's like, a recipe. A single recipe is just like those turn by turn directions, but as you gain experience and learn sort of the technique and science behind things, that's like someone handing you like the whole map of the neighborhood. and letting you choose your path.
Yeah, back to the vigorously rinsing the stir fry meat.
Mhm.
What is the science on why it makes it more tender? The water of it.
Yeah.
And do other liquids act the same way?
So in a marinade, there's a couple things that are going to make the meat sort of more tender, juicy. I mean, the washing part is really just like the mechanical breakdown. It's like the physically it's the same way that like pounding meat or using a jacquard, you're breaking down muscle proteins.
Okay.
Those are going to shorten the muscle proteins, loosen them up a little bit so that you just have less work to chew. It's almost like it's been pre-chewed, so that's going to make it more tender. Loosening those fibers is also going to allow them to absorb those marinades more, so you get more flavor. And then the other important part, and this is where, in velveting, you use egg whites. Some recipes, I generally recommend using a little bit of baking soda also, and select recipes do as well. That alkaline chemistry actually helps the meats. Also, it gives them an almost sort of like slick texture to them, where
Yes.
the exterior of them is really, because with Western cooking, often like we're looking for that sort of textural contrast between like a browned crust and the softer sort of chewier interior, if you think of like a steak or a roast chicken or whatever. Whereas with stir fries, we get a crunch from other elements. It might be vegetables, it might be nuts, it might be fried seeds or something, but the meat is often very tender, all the way through, and you sort of get this sort of like, it's just like velvety and slick from the inside all the way to the inside. And an alkaline marinade is what gives you that sort of texture.
So baking powder,
baking soda,
baking soda.
Yeah, small amount of baking soda.
Egg whites. Are you cornstarching?
Yeah, cornstarch also. Cornstarch is one of the things. So when you're cooking your meat, the muscle proteins tighten up and it expels some liquids. And so when you're coating the things in cornstarch, that cornstarch, the starch granules in there actually absorb that liquid. And so if your pork is cooking and some juices are coming out, those juices kind of get trapped in that cornstarch matrix and swell those starch granules. And so that gives you also that sort of like very thin layer of sort of tender, slick, intensely flavored coating on there.
And that is like the quintessential what you want, for me anyway, and I think everybody probably, but like that's what you want with a stir fry, and that's why they're so fucking good. And it's actually like really hard to nail.
One of the things I find that a lot of people, and especially a lot of publications even make, is one of the mistakes that they make is that with Western cooking, we're all about sort of browning, so like and sort of intensifying flavors through that. So you build umami in a steak by making sure that you get a really nice hard sear, right? So you leave it there, you let it brown until it's well browned, and that builds up that complexity of flavor. With stir fries and a lot of sort of East Asian cooking in general, with stir fries, like you're not looking to actually get that Maillard reaction, that caramelization on the surface of the meat. Instead, you're getting those umami flavors and that color through long fermented sauces, So that's why a stir fry might be flavored with soy sauce, might be flavored with fish sauce, miso. So all those sort of umami compounds, those glutamates, inocyanates, those are developed through the fermentation process, and then we add these really intense sauces to the stir fries, so that even in the even when you're stir frying your meat over very high heat for a minute or two, not long enough to actually develop a big sear, you get all those sort of deeper, more complex umami flavors through the marinade and through the flavorings in the sauce. And in fact, if you do sort of leave your meat there and let it sear, that's when you get the sort of drier texture.
Okay, this is when I do that, that's my major like error, is like attempting to get color.
Well, I mean, whatever works for you, it works for you. I mean, I think that's general advice for any cook, whether professional or home cook. If you're doing something you like, don't stop doing it.
But there's room for improvement in my world. I find chicken thighs to be the most forgiving cut of meat across the board. And it's my go-to for a stir fry. And actually, so what I do to do a chicken stir fry is I'll dice thighs and I will throw them in my wok or my Dutch oven with like a half a cup of water, and I'll basically just boil them until the
Yeah.
water evaporates.
Okay.
And then I pull them aside.
Yeah.
So I cook them once. And then when I'm ready to do my stir fry, I do the build up and I add them and I double cook them hard. And then they absorb all the sauce. But I can get my chicken where I want it to be with my vegetables, like my celery and my peppers still have a crunch.
Right.
But it's definitely like not a legit technique. Like it's not
No, it
traditional,
absolutely is. No,
but it just doesn't work with other meats.
Well,
And it
so
works so
I mean,
well
what
with
you're
chicken.
describing is very similar to what is often the last step in velveting, right? So you marinate with cornstarch, some kind of alkaline base. So egg whites are alkaline. So egg whites, baking soda, and cornstarch, and whatever other flavorings. So rice wine, soy sauce, you know, whatever other marinating ingredients you want. But then in you know, the sort of more the long form of velveting is then you par cook the meat. So it can either be in oil, you know, so you get a cup or two of oil hot in your wok, and then you do what's called passing through. So you put the meat in there, and let it cook for just like 30 seconds or so, just to sort of set the outside and get the cooking process started, and then you drain it out and you put it on the side. You can also do water velveting, so you get boiling water in there, and you par cook the meat for 30 seconds to a minute in the water. What I like to do if I'm water velveting is then I'll spread it out on a sheet tray so that all the excess moisture will just steam off.
Right.
But then you dump out the water, you stir fry your vegetables, and then you add the par cooked meat back in just for a really brief cook at the end, when you add your sauces and other seasonings and everything. But that helps you sort of set that exterior texture. It helps make sure that every sort of piece of meat is individual, so it doesn't kind of clump together when you drop it in the wok. That's a lot of what gives you that sort of velveted texture, where you are able to set the meat and get the cooking just right without overcooking it and without having to sort of like break it up with a spatula or anything.
What's the minimum marinate time on velveting?
You know, it depends how big your meat is cut. So if you're doing like, you know, thin slivers of pork, some kind of lean pork, something like that, or beef, I mean, even, you know, half an hour is fine.
Okay.
Because you're really sort of breaking up those proteins when you do the massaging step. And so the marination happens really fast. For sort of like cubed chicken, something like that, maybe more like a couple hours. But you know, it's a pretty fast process. Most of the tenderization is happening through the physical act of massaging it while you wash it, and then the rest is really sort of just a surface treatment to get the flavor and that sort of slick coating on it.
Slick boy.
Yeah. And you know, and marinades, they penetrate extremely slowly. So if you take like a chicken breast and you marinate it, some bits, so like things like salt, some simple sugars, MSG, things like that are very small molecules, will work their way into the meat relatively fast over the course of a few hours. But big organic compounds, like the things that give you sort of more, you know, what I would think of as sort of like the harmonies of flavor, like the aroma. So aromatic compounds from herbs, garlic, things like that. Those are really big molecules that don't penetrate very quickly at all.
Right.
So even over the course of like a day, it'll penetrate like a millimeter or two into the meat. Wow. So if you take like a chicken breast, marinate it with like 40 cloves of garlic, in like say a soy sauce solution, the salt, MSG from the soy sauce will get into the middle of the chicken relatively fast, but the garlic will only make it on the outer layer. So if you take that chicken and then like, you know, carefully shave off the outer layer and cook it, like you won't really even taste the garlic at all.
Now, what about like in that scenario, like I love my vac seal machine in my garage. I mean, it's like a mini vac, but so like this thing has like bag marination on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It pumps the air in and sucks it out, and it does that on 3 cycles. So it's basically like forcing the osmosis. I feel like I'll do that, and then I'll just leave my meat out at room temperature for 2 hours, and it's like a miracle of a marinade.
Yeah,
I feel like it simulates like what a 24-hour marinade would be, but like, what's your take on that? Is there
Yeah,
truth to
well,
that,
so
or-
what's going on there? So it's not necessarily osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of a liquid across a cell, like across a membrane. So like the individual cells. What is more likely happening there when you're doing like a cryovac marinade is that you have these muscle fibrils, which are sort of long tube like agglomerations of proteins. So they're essentially like a series, like a bundle of straws that are
Yeah,
bundled
yeah.
together, right? And so the way a cryovac machine works is that you are sucking all the air out of a chamber vac, that is, you're sucking all the air out of the chamber, and so inside that chamber is a vacuum, and as that happens, you're creating a vacuum within the bag, and then when the air suddenly rushes back in, that's when, well, generally it'll seal the bag and then the air will rush back in. If you're doing 3 cycles of it, what happens is that those individual muscle fibrils, it's like, if when you go to like the fair and you get those like honey straws,
Yeah.
they're like the long straws that are filled with honey,
Yeah.
and you kind of suck on them and they get harder and harder to suck out as you go, but then when you release them, like air rushes back in, right? And so that's sort of what's happening to those muscle fibrils as the cryovac machine's working. So some of the sort of juices that are inside those long structures are kind of sucked out, and then when the vacuum releases again, things will rush back in because the pressure will open up, right? And so if you have the food surrounded with a marinade, it's essentially like you're sucking all the honey out of one of those straws, then submerging it into a different liquid and letting it go, and then that other liquid will go in to fill the space.
Yeah.
So you are,
Is
especially
that
if
not osmosis? What is that?
that's not osmosis. I mean, that's just basic sort of suction. Yeah, but
Okay.
osmosis is when you have a semi-permeable membrane. So it's like actually getting in, like going across like a physical barrier, when the liquid is actually going across a physical barrier to
Okay.
equalize the
Penetrating a cell wall versus like we're extracting molecules
water
from
or
the
whatever else is
protein
dissolved in them.
and so marinating
just
in
like a bigger
general
structure.
has nothing to do with osmosis.
So it can, yeah. So certain things will be small enough to pass that cell membrane. So salt is small enough to cross that membrane
Except salt,
barrier.
sugar, MSG.
Yeah, but bigger proteins generally aren't.
Okay.
Because otherwise your cell would be leaking their contents all over the inside of your body. Or every time we went swimming, the proteins would the mitochondria would come out of our cells. But no, osmosis is the movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane to equalize the osmotic pressure, which is basically the amount of stuff that's dissolved in one place versus in another place. But no, osmosis doesn't have too much to do with either brining or marination. Actually, it's marination is much more about sort of the larger metastructure of a muscle and the transition of things into there, as opposed to sort of the individual cell structure. And brining is more about the salts in the brine breaking down that muscle structure and loosening it so that it can then absorb more water, as opposed to osmosis.
So to all of my chefs and sous chefs and line cooks out there that I've lied to these years about, it's osmosis.
It's a wide misconception. Yeah.
Well, on the marinade, right? So your standard Western marinade has an acid involved to break down protein and tenderize, correct?
Yeah. I mean, acids can break down proteins in a way.
Denatures protein.
Yeah, but acids also have this effect where on a sort of small scale they will tenderize in the same way that like cooking can tenderize. But if you over marinate with an acid, just like if you overcook, it will have the opposite effect, where things will start to tighten up and sort of turn chalky. So if your marinade is overly acidic, or if you leave it in there for too long, it's it's the same way like a ceviche gets that sort of cooked texture.
Yes.
The same thing will happen with an overly acidic marinade. But so you got to kind of strike that right balance, between acidity and timing.
So it seems like with the velveting, it's the alkaline
Yeah.
that is providing a tenderization.
It's part, it's part tenderization. The velveting, it's the massaging of the meat that does a lot of the tenderizing, and then the alkaline is sort of more what gives us that sort of mouthfeel, that sensation of smoothness and velvetyness and slickness.
Okay.
So it alters proteins. In fact, at the time that I wrote the wok, at least, the mechanism by which it works wasn't, at least in the research I did, I couldn't find out exactly how it affects the physical way in which it affects those changes. But velveting, adding an alkaline marinade, it's simultaneously kind of stiffens meat in a way, but not doesn't make it tougher, but it helps it hold its shape a little more. It gives it a little bit sort of more crunch, but it also makes it feel slicker. So if you've ever treated shrimp with a alkaline marinade, like a little bit of baking soda on shrimp. So if you've had like a crystal skin dumpling, with a dim sum, where with the shrimp inside there that have like an almost like crunchy, like popping texture, that's shrimp that has been in an alkaline marinade. And so it gives it this like slickness, but also this sort of crunch to seafood. And
to me, that's the perfect texture of shrimp.
That's
what I go for. That pop, that snap.
Like a little pinch of baking soda will help you get there.
That's cool. That's interesting. I've got other ways of getting it there, and I've also got other theories on how sometimes it's impossible to, like, especially when you buy shrimp that's dipped. And if people that are listening aren't familiar with that term, it's when shrimp is processed and it's dipped in sodium tripolyphosphate as it's a plumpeting agent. It's a, once again, it gets you into paying for water weight. If you've sauteed your shrimp and they shrink down to half their size,
and they're chewy, full of water.
Your pan's full of water, and your shrimp are overcooked, and you're just like, I don't know how to cook seafood. It's not your fault.
Buy better shrimp.
Buy better shrimp. Look at the back of the bag.
Anything that is TSP, or STP. You don't want to.
You just got to look at the back of the bag, but there's shrimp that has the ingredient of salt involved, and I don't find any issues with that. Personally.
The other thing that happens with shrimp, and shrimp and lobster, other crustaceans in general, is that there's an enzyme in the heads of lobsters and shrimp that after the animal dies, that enzyme will start. It's a polymerase, so it'll actually start breaking down proteins. And so like this is the reason why you want to buy live lobsters or live shrimp, especially if they're head on, because what happens is after they die, that it'll start breaking down the proteins really quickly. So if you've ever been like out for like
and they get creamy and pasty.
So my advice is generally, if you're gonna buy head on crustaceans, you want them to be alive. And if you're gonna buy frozen or processed crustaceans, then like you should buy them with the heads off, because generally, like if they've died with the heads on, they're gonna start very, very rapidly breaking down and getting softer and sort of creamier in texture.
And in general, with buying seafood, actually, there's a lot of misnomers with frozen seafood. There's wild Alaskan salmon, like vessels on the water that have like deep freezing technology in their hulls. And it's like they're freezing these whole salmon pre-rigger. And when it thaws, it's fresher than anything you're going to get on ice at the market. And it's a thing that people don't really know how to wrap their head around. Like in my world, I've stopped calling seafood fresh, but rather on ice. It's like, am I going to buy it frozen or on ice? Even if it's wild caught, depending on the species, the seasonality, and the region, that fish could be 16 days from when it was caught, and it's still fresh. I mean, it's still good, but the protein structure has broken down far more than if I got it frozen. But if it was frozen,
and I think a lot of people don't know also that, like, when you're buying fish from the supermarket, whether it's sold as fresh or you're buying it from the freezer, it most likely has been frozen at some point in that supply chain. Most likely it was frozen on the ship when it was out at sea, when it was caught, or right at the farm. right when it was harvested before it gets shipped. But the vast majority of seafood that you're buying from like a supermarket has been frozen at some point.
Yeah, and you can look at the tag and see if it's previously frozen.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite accessible species to get in the US is Mississippi catfish because you can almost always get it not having been frozen. It has a pretty good shelf life to it, but in markets where it moves, like especially in South Carolina,
Yeah.
I can go to Publix, get Mississippi farm raised catfish. It's fresh, never frozen, and I just cook it within 2 days, and it is just delicate and delectable.
Catfish is one of the one of the fish I have trouble with.
Really?
Well, I've never lived in the South, and so maybe in a market where it moves more, where there's more demand for it. But for me, catfish just it always has that kind of muddy, especially farm raised catfish. That to me, it just has like a muddy aftertaste.
So that's a big deterrent for a lot of folks. And I can say that Mississippi farm raised catfish, now there's many large farmers and producers within that economy
Mm-hmm.
and industry. Catfish is by far the largest majority finfish species that is farm raised in the United States. And I've never had any farm raised Mississippi catfish that was muddy. It's very clean due to their methodology. But catfish in general, wild, like if you get like wild blue invasive catfish from the Chesapeake Bay, the species didn't belong in the bay. It got
Right.
transported there. It's invasive, but nobody wants to catch it because the sizing is spotty.
Right.
I tried to buy it for one of my restaurants, and it's just not good.
Yeah.
It's very inconsistent. And as much as I want to play my part, that's where the buck stops.
Just does it taste like you're taking a bite full of the bottom of a lake?
It's just fucking gross. I was just in DC meeting with some legislators and representatives of Congress, and one of the offices we met with was man, I want to say it was Virginia, state of Virginia. They're working to pass a bill called the Moz Act, and they're establishing an industry for fishers to go catch the invasive catfish, and they're establishing a pipeline to sell that for pet food.
I was just gonna say you should
Just
turn it into
like-
like fancy
yeah.
pet food.
Like Purina is in,
Mm-hmm.
and Kirkland is in. Like major
Yeah,
players.
it's big.
I would say within the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to start seeing like Kirkland brand or Fancy Feast or Purina Pro coming out with wild blue Chesapeake catfish.
Yeah,
Like
it's good marketing.
And it's really cool though.
Oh yeah.
What's on your 86 list?
There's not many things on my 86 list. I like most things, but I do get a little annoyed sometimes. And this is something that used to happen to me a lot when I was sort of regularly writing on Serious Eats. And these days I try to sort of be zen about it, but with like online creators and especially with like social media people who have this sort of necessity to just pump out content every day, and it's like every day they come out with a new recipe, and it's like, you're not developed, that's not your recipe, that's like you're taking that from someone else and just making it and calling it yours. And so for me, the thing that grinds my gears is not necessarily that people are doing that. Like it's cool if you want to take other people, I cook my recipes all the time, share them as much as you want. What I don't like is people who present something that they had very little to do with as theirs, and
Yeah.
and you find this a lot. That's like, oh, this is my buffalo chicken. It's like, no, there's like a million buffalo chicken dips out there, and you just picked one that looked good and you're calling it yours now.
Yeah.
I think the thing that you could be adding to it is that you have a really good communication style, or you have a really good visual style. You have a way of communicating it to an audience that is going to discover this, because the ultimate goal of recipe development is to get more people cooking, right? And so the more ways you can amplify that, great. And so if your contribution to that is like, I know how to beautifully set a table, or I know how to get this cool camera angle, or whatever it is that you're doing that your audience connects to, like that's your contribution to it. You don't also need to then claim ownership over the recipe that wasn't yours, So for me, it's like, freely share things, freely take things from other people, but give credit where credit's due. Because to me, like, it doesn't cost anything to you, and in fact, it's better for your audience to say, hey, look, I got this recipe from Serious Eats, I got this recipe from the New York Times, I got this recipe from Food 52, Cooks Illustrated, whatever it is, wherever you got your recipe.
Those are great sources.
Yeah.
By
Just
the
four
way.
off the top of my head, but yeah.
Well, I mean, like, who can you trust? Like, who's a credible provider of like real recipes?
I think sources like, Serious Eats, Cooks Illustrated, New York Times, like what they offer is that they have
American Test Kitchen.
yeah, America's Test Kitchens, Cooks
Mhm.
Illustrated, yeah, that they have a ton of experience working with home cooks and know sort of the pitfalls and the way that a home cook works. And so when you use a recipe from them, they've already anticipated the problems you might have and have worked that into the recipe. Whereas someone who's cooked a few things themselves at home, or even often like chefs, it's like chefs are used to working in restaurant kitchens and they're not necessarily used to working with a home cook under those constraints or the way a home cook might think. And so oftentimes chef recipes are difficult to follow for a home cook because it's just a very different thing cooking at home or cooking in a restaurant. All that said, I think there are a lot of great independent recipe developers, especially if you're looking for like a really specific world cuisine or a specific niche. So like Just One Cookbook, I think, is the best source for Japanese recipes online, and Nami has been writing recipes for home cooks for a couple decades now. Walks of Life, it's they have restaurant experience and home cooking experience, and they write amazing Chinese recipes. So there's places you can go where if you that are not necessarily sort of these big flagship publications that really they do their research, they do their testing, they properly attribute ideas and influences so that people who want to read further can follow up.
Man, I mean, just on that note, like, dude, like, seriously, like, when I said it in the intro, like, I am a better cook because of you. Like, when I opened up my first restaurant and then I really wanted to start stepping up and doing R&D, I was reading your articles. I wasn't like using your recipes. I was
Right.
using your techniques and I was using your science.
Well, that's what
And
I
I
hope.
was using your methodology. And I would have like 8 quarter sheet trays out, and each one would be labeled with a time change or a temperature change
Mm-hmm.
or a variable. And we were doing like scientific method, something that I would have never come up with if I wasn't seeing you lay it out. And it wasn't like I didn't use your recipes per se, but it was like, to me, the jewel of your recipes is like there's a universal understanding
Right.
that you can walk away with that'll make you a better cook.
Well, yeah, for me, I mean, I don't even use my own recipes, on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, for me, that was sort of the goal with my first book with the food lab, and a lot of the articles I wrote on Serious Eats was, yeah, I want people who read this article to not necessarily go out and make this like 40 ingredient 4-day chili or
Or
whatever,
like the perfect French fry, but now I understand the science of the potato.
Exactly. And so that, for me, yeah, it's like, going back to the idea of like a map versus directions, it's like, I wanted to give people like an atlas, like here's like like I'm filling in these areas of the map so that you can choose where you want to go, and so you understand sort of the basic layout of how science and technique can help you achieve your own goals. So yeah, people who want to use the recipes, great. But yeah, I think if what you're telling me now is sort of exactly what I was hoping for, which is I want people to use the techniques to express themselves better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for that. And I know a lot of other people are too. Like, you are able to spread the joy of cooking and to make cooking more accessible.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, the most beautiful thing.
Oh,
Thank
you.
What inspired you to go down this rabbit hole?
Oh, geez. I went to school for engineering, architecture. And while I was in college, that's when I started cooking. So I didn't really cook much growing up. I enjoyed food, but I didn't really cook much growing up. But yeah, I got into cooking. It was a summer job, and I just kind of fell in love with the kitchen. This is around the time when like Kitchen Confidential came out, like it had come out the year before, I think, and it was like, oh, it's like, if I can't be a musician, like I'll be a cook, it's like the next best thing, which is not really, but but you know, I enjoyed kitchen work, and I enjoyed sort of the atmosphere of a kitchen. And so I went into restaurants, part time in college and then full time after school for a number of years. And for me, when I realized like, okay, like either I can continue doing this and hopefully someday, do what you do, have my own restaurants, be a real chef, uh, you know, or I could try and get to the other side of the industry and see what that's all about. And for me, the idea of um, writing recipes that could sort of reach a broader audience and people who are cooking for themselves or for their families at home. To me, that was just sort of more appealing than, um, especially because it's like restaurant work is it kills you. Right? It's
Grueling.
grueling. You never see your friends. You never see your family. You miss all your holidays. And so no. So when that option came up for me, it was actually a job. Like a friend was like, "Oh, I saw this job posting for a test cook at Cook's Illustrated." She was like, "Oh, well, I'll give that a shot."
Cool. Okay, so that's how it started.
Yeah, as a
Yeah.
as a test cook at Cook's Illustrated. And then yeah, over the course of the next few years, it's just like I had all these questions I wondered about as I was in my restaurant days. It's like, why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it that way? And especially back then, 20 something years ago, it was like I think these days restaurants are better about this, but back then it was just like you do it that way because the chef told you to do it that
Yeah,
way.
that's how
Like, you
chef
don't ask.
wants.
Yeah, there is such thing as stupid questions. Just like
Yeah.
fucking do it. And so for me, it was like, well, like what resources would I have wanted when I was a restaurant cook and when I was learning how to cook? And so that's sort of what the food lab was. It's like I had all these questions. I want to find all the answers to them and present them in a way that I would have understood as a beginning cook, or as someone as
Hmm.
someone who didn't really know a ton about food science or technique but was really curious, and wanted to know better. And yeah, that's how that's how the food lab went. And for me, it was just like, I'm doing this for myself. It was interesting to me. It was fun work. It's like I can get meagerly paid to cook and sort of explore these questions that I've always wondered about. Like that seems like a great job. And then luckily it turned out that a lot of people had a lot of the same questions, and so
Hmm.
that the
Hmm.
column became popular and the book did really well.
Your path had a big hand to play in what I was doing and
Mhm.
in my path, because I stayed in the kitchen and you were providing the tools for people that said, "Hey, I wonder about this. I wonder about that." Right? I
Yeah,
mean, it was
well,
like
I'm glad to hear
it
that.
wasn't theoretical. It was actually happening in
What
real
years were you
time.
in Boston?
I was in Boston from 2008 to
Okay.
2014.
Okay. Yeah. I was cooking in Boston from 1998 till 2006, I think 2005. Can't remember, something like
Yeah,
that.
like we just missed each other and then somehow we became acquainted
Yeah,
because
it was
Boston's right there.
through Richard Chudy, right through the
Yeah,
burger
yeah,
book that you
yeah.
guys did
Chuddy,
together.
Chuddy.
Chuddy, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah.
Yeah, shout outs to Richard Chuddy.
What's he doing these days? Is he still burgering? Is he what?
I know him and his amazing wife Katie. They, we'd stay in touch. We talk. I know they work with food.
Uh-huh.
They always had their own like a catering business,
Mhm.
and they have like private clients, and that's really how they make their living. And so the burger blog was an outlet of
Yeah.
creativity. I don't know if
I
he's
must have
still
that book on a shelf here somewhere. It was Burger Revolution. Is that
the
what it's called?
American Burger Revival.
Oh, Revival. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's probably a good example of a cookbook written by chefs that might be a little too hard to follow.
Well, there was a lot of burger stuff going on in
Yeah,
that era. Yeah.
but I think it holds up. And the book that I just wrote with my wife Cassidy, that's called Salt and Shore:
Mhm.
Recipes from the Coastal South. We really leveled up on providing recipes for the home cook. So there's like a green chili and crab pimento cheese.
Oh, nice.
It's like the easiest thing in the world to make, but I promise you, if you make it, you'll eat it in one sitting. Just grab a sleeve of Ritz crackers,
Yeah.
and it yields like a quart, which is a good amount of cheese.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
are you I'm assuming I already know the answer to this, but are you a blue crab or a Dungeness
hmm.
guy?
Well, I would say it depends. most often what I'm going to purchase on a day-to-day basis is going to be like blue crab, whether it's fin or it's claw or it's lump. That depends on what I'm doing, and or who I'm cooking for. I think the best picked crab meat is peaky toe from New England.
Okay,
You
yeah,
give me like
yeah.
jumbo lump peaky toe crab, and I'm in heaven. Secondary behind that would be Dungeness crab, and then there's like the whole, are we doing if we're doing cocktail claws? I think snow crab claws taste the best and have the best texture, but they also have the smallest meat, so people get upset about it. Crab is an interesting conversation, man.
I mean, for me, it's like, I grew up in New York and New England, and so yeah, I mean, blue crab or peaky toe was it for me, but having spent time, manually picking that stuff, it's a pain. Like, it's really a pain. Like, it's tiny bits of meat, a lot of shell, and then you have to go through it and pick out all the little bits of shell afterwards. And Dungeness is just much easier than that.
Yeah.
And so now, living in the Pacific Northwest, I find, Dungeness, I think it does have a little more bitterness. Sometimes it has, like, not quite as sort of clean, sweet a flavor. But the advantage for me is like, I got my kids here. We can go crabbing out in Edmonds, and like we pull up some crabs, and then it's just much easier to get enough meat out to get leave my kids happy.
Hey chef, are you ready for the flavorful 5?
Sure. As
All right.
right as I'll ever be. Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be a real tough one for you.
Okay.
But what's the best sandwich you've ever had?
Okay. All right. Oh shit. It's hard to pick, because I wrote a whole children's book about how the context of the idea of best, and how it's always contextual based on your mood and who you are and where you are and what you need at that moment.
I agree with you 100%.
All right.
In this month,
I'll just name you some really good sandwiches I've had, or a really good sandwich I've had.
Yeah.
Okay. The Lone Pine Larder on Orcas Island, and this is the one that's relatively inaccessible because you got to get to Orcas Island, which means you got to probably fly into Seattle, take the drive up to Anacortes, take the ferry over to Orcas Island, which has a population of a few thousand. It's a beautiful place to go. My daughter is actually is there right now at summer camp. We're shooting this in July. She's there at summer camp. But the Lone Pine Larder is a larder and a sandwich shop. They have an incredible tuna melt. So it's local albacore tuna. They put some like chopped olives, chopped pimentos in there.
Okay, my mom's style.
Okay, yeah. And just really good cheddar cheese, and then they just know how to griddle the bread. I think the key for a grilled cheese or a tuna melt is that you've got to get like nice low and slow cooking in butter, so you get that really even, like, sort of golden brown sheath on the outside of the bread. Because I don't want spotty brown. Like, I want that really nice sort of every sort of square inch of it is golden brown, buttery,
crackly,
and delicious.
Yeah.
So that would be, I think.
Do you like a cheese melt out where there's like maybe kind of corners?
Oh yeah.
Cheese.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Where the cheese just leaks out a little bit and kind of, it gets a little crispy on the go, so you get that little frico bite on the edges.
The frico.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so that's my current. When you ask me what's my favorite sandwich or best sandwich, like, it's probably the most recent great sandwich I've had.
Okay.
A much more accessible one, also I've had recently, but I have it pretty regularly. Go to Unbien in Seattle. Seattle has a sort of there's like this mini culture of Caribbean sandwich shops. Paseo was the original, and then there was a big fight with the owner and the chef and all this business that went on. And so the owner's sons, after the owner got pushed out of the business, went and opened this new place called Unbien. So now there's a couple of Paseos and a couple of Unbiens. They do very similar sandwiches. I think Unbiens are a little better though, but it's this Caribbean roast pork. So it's this like mojo marinated pork shoulder, slow cooked. They serve it in like a crusty roll from Macrina Bakery, which is here in Seattle. They have like a really heavily garlicky aioli on it. And then the key there is that they have these onions that are, they kind of thick slice them and then grill them and then hold them off in a pan on the side so that they get grilled flavor, but they also get kind of caramelized,
Yeah.
while
I know
still
the
retaining some
technique.
crunch. Yeah, and so it's yeah, it's just like super juicy roast pork, garlicky aioli, these caramelized grilled onions, a slice of romaine lettuce, which gets wilty, but in this context, I think works, and then a bunch of pickled jalapenos, and
Okay.
it's just like it's not a sandwich you want to eat in your car. It's like a sandwich you want to pick up from the shop, like walk over to the beach and just like sit down over the sand where it can drip everywhere. But it's incredible.
Dude, in a alternate universe, I think that you and I are soulmate life partners that just eat sandwiches together. I want to bring you back to Boston real quick. I wonder if you have had this.
Mhm.
Do you remember the Italian at Monica's Mercato in the North End?
I don't think I've had that one.
The next time you go to Boston,
Okay.
do me a solid and get it.
Okay.
Monica's, they've got their own bakery that they provide themselves with the baguette, and but it's not like your cut your gum
Yeah,
little
yeah,
your
yeah.
mouth baguette. So maybe that's not the right term. That kind of bread that's like torpedo shaped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
It's
an
got a good
Italian roll, whatever,
crust.
like an Italian American bakery
Yeah,
roll.
yeah. And they just shave the salumis
Super
and
thin.
yeah, just thin. And then they do like a probably good sharp prove or something.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell them what you want on there. Like I might go like hots and some like basil
Yeah.
and some balsamic and tomato. But it's like just it's the right bread and the texture on the meat. And then that Boston pickled pepper relish, the
Yeah, yeah,
hots.
yeah. Love it.
Just takes you to that place and
That, that's one of the things that I miss most on the West Coast is that there's not that many places that shave their cured meats thin enough.
yeah.
You get an Italian sub out here, and it's often like, yeah, the meat is like, like 2 millimeters thick instead of half a millimeter.
Yeah, texture is so
You know,
important.
but the place in Seattle. Oh, and the place in Seattle. This is also one of my favorite sandwiches ever. There's a place called Post Alley Pizza. They bake their own hoagie rolls, so like a sesame seeded hoagie roll, and they do, yeah, one of the best Italians I've had anywhere. So like really nicely shaved meats, hot provolone. They do like a mix of iceberg and a bunch of like radicchio and other bitter greens in there. So like thinly shaved with vinegar and olive oil. And then you get what they call jazz, which is like a hot pepper and anchovy spread.
Sounds really good. I have always have like great excitement and respect and will order something that has radicchio because it is a very like it is not something that most people cook with or put on a menu.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
once you've had, yeah, if I find that, like, yeah, once you've had shaved radicchio on an Italian sub, to not want it is ridiculous.
what is the holy grail of spice to you?
Of spice, I mean, for me, it's probably Sichuan peppercorn.
Okay.
That's that, or Sancho peppers, so that that nice citrusy, piney aroma, and then the mouth numbing aspect of it. We were talking a little bit before the show, but I didn't experience the first time I experienced Sichuan peppercorn was at a place in Boston called New Taste of Asia. I think it was in Alston actually, and this was in the early 2000s, maybe 2003 or so. But Sichuan peppercorn for a number of years was banned for import into the United States because of a like a larval beetle infestation fear, I believe it was. And so when I was growing up and sort of discovering Sichuan food, I was experiencing it without actual Sichuan peppercorn, which I think most of the people in the U.S. were. And so and Sichuan and Sichuan peppercorn, it's that really essential so the mala, like the numbing hot, it's that numbing part of the numbing hot flavor combination that you find in some Sichuan dishes. So things like mapo tofu, things like kung pao chicken, that's like the essential flavor of those dishes. And so even though I had had both those dishes plenty of times, and especially sort of the Chinese American versions of them growing up, I never experienced that real flavor and that sensation, that numbing mouthfeel of Sichuan peppercorn until the early 2000s. And so when I had that for the first time, I was like, holy shit, like this is like a brand new sensation. It's like it's one of those things that it's if you've never had Sichuan peppercorn, which these days most people probably have, but like it's really hard to describe because I think what they've discovered is that the sensation that you get when the numbing sensation that you get when eating Sichuan peppercorns, it's the feeling that you get is the same feeling you get if you hold a metal bar that is vibrating at 50 hertz, 50 megahertz between your teeth. So it's a kind of strange vibrational numbing sensation that you get that it's not quite like Novocaine. It's not quite like, it's not like drinking dairy after you've had heat, but it gives it allows your tongue to sort of sense things very differently. And so it's not just sort of the aroma you get from it, but it's this completely sensation altering.
And you need enough of it in order for that to happen.
You need enough of it. You also need it to be sort of fresh enough and high quality enough, because sometimes, I find sometimes you get Sichuan peppercorn where you grind it and you get some aroma, but then there's not actually much nummingness. And then sometimes you eat it and it's like, holy shit, like that's just like completely blew out my taste buds, So when you're working with Sichuan peppercorn, I think it's important to get it from a good source. I typically order from Mala Market, or there's another company called 50 Hertz Foods. But getting good quality fresh Sichuan peppercorns, and then before you're using it, like almost more than any other spice, I think it's important to really taste it first, because you can't smell how numbing it's going to be. So you got to put it on your tongue and see, like, okay, it's like, is this going to be very numbing or only slightly numbing? Okay. And sort of adjust how much you use based on that. But yeah, that combination of like chili heat and Sichuan peppercorn numbness is like, one of my favorite.
Oh yeah, like the capsaicin with the numbing.
Yeah,
and then you add like like umami bomb from something fermented. It's like, dude, it's like Asian food is just set up to be like better than like other food. It's explosively delicious.
Well, it's very easy to, with Western cooking, it's like if you want to, or at least a lot of it, if you want to intensify flavors, a lot of it is about reduction. So like a great demi-glace, a great sauce at a restaurant, it's going to take you 36 hours to make. You got to make your veal stock, you got to roast your bones, you got to extract all that flavor, and then you got to very slowly reduce it down to get all this really concentrated umami flavors. And that's why like a bordelaise at a restaurant, it's something that you really only experience at a restaurant. Like most home cooks aren't going to do all those steps. They don't even have access to a lot of those ingredients, so that's why like a sauce at a great restaurant has that intensity of flavor. With a lot of Asian cooking, East Asian cooking, it's like that flavor comes from, I'm taking a scoop of this, like somebody did all the work for me. They fermented, fermented these soybeans, they fermented these horse beans and chilies for me.
Thanks, Red Boat fish sauce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
like fermented these anchovies. I go out and I can add as much or as little, like if I want more umami, more flavor, it's just add a little more of the sauce. And so, it becomes very easy, especially for home cooks, to like really get that intensity of flavor with just,
it's definitely like the most developed section of my pantry at home.
Yeah. Well, it's like a shortcut to intense flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, what's your favorite street food?
Pizza. I mean, I grew up in New York, so a slice of pizza. I mean, it's my death row meal. It's like just a plain New York slice.
Like plain cheese.
Yeah, to me, a plain slice is a triangular slice that you can fold. Nice crisp crust, good charring on the bottom. A simple tomato sauce. Low moisture aged mozzarella. Like a good slice. The shop I grew up going to the most, like the thing I've eaten more than anything else in my life is a slice of pizza from the shop called Sacco, which at the time when I was a kid, it used to be called Joe and Dominic's, and Joe and Dominic, now their sons run the restaurant.
Who's Sacco?
Sacco is the name of a town in Italy.
Okay,
they were from.
Okay,
yeah. So they changed the name from Joe and Dominic to Sacco Pizza. But it's just like your nothing fancy, nothing special New York slice. They got a window you can walk up and order a slice from. They've got a regular deck oven. If you order in New York, at least these days, at fancier places, like they'll make all the different individual pies. But at this shop, they still do it the old way, where they make the cheese pies, and if you want like pepperoni on it, they will add some pepperoni to it and reheat.
Well, when they blast it. Yeah. That's
they
cool.
still got like the fruit punch and the lemonade and like a little bubbler machine.
What's the neighborhood?
It's on 54th and 10th, so Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
So it's it's not like a a destination pizza joint. It's not like a Best Pizza Williamsburg. It's not like a DeFara. It's not one of those places that shows up on people's sort of slice radar, like a Scars or a Industry, which are all great, but no, but it's just like a taste memory for me. It's like this to
Awesome.
me. This is like the quintessential New York slice.
Hey, didn't you like grow up like with your grandmother, like living in the building too?
Yeah. I grew up on 125th and Riverside, so Morningside Heights, and my grandmother lived on 9J, and me and my sisters and my mom lived on 10J.
And was she born in the U.S. or was?
No, my grandparents, and so my mom was born in Japan, in Nagoya, and grew up in Tokyo, and then she came to the U.S. in the 70s for junior college. So she came to the U.S. when she was 16, and then my grandparents came to the U.S. a little bit later, in the late 70s, because my grandfather got a job as a teaching at Columbia, and so yeah, my mom came to the U.S. first, and then my grandparents followed. So yeah, I grew up with both my grandparents and my mom. My grandmother didn't speak English, and so Japanese was actually like our main language at home. Although I've lost most of it, because I haven't spoken much since I was a kid. But yeah, I grew up in a very it was a mix, so like when we went to my grandmother's house, it was a very Japanese household, so everything she cooked was Japanese. So it was, meals were like rice, lots of pickles, fish dishes, thing like our favorite thing was called tarako, which is like a salted cod roe, not cod roe, haddock roe, I think it is, but that she would grill, or broil, like sort of broken up over rice with pickles. Food was not a central part of the experience growing up. I have a lot of those sort of Japanese flavors built into my palate, but my mom did not like cooking. She cooked for us every day, and we as a family, we sat down every single day for dinner because she thought that was important. And she was frugal. It's like we couldn't afford to eat out or order in, but as soon as the kids moved out of the house, she stopped. She she's not one of those people that loves cooking or that finds like a deep connection to food. Food is like a thing that we need to be able to, to be healthy and grow. And so yeah, I didn't really find a connection to food. It's taken me a long time to even. I learned to cook as a restaurant cook. I got my first job. It was basically like I went into a restaurant to looking for a job as a server because I just needed to make money for the summer. And they're like, well, like our prep cook didn't show up this morning, so if you can work as a prep cook for the summer, you can have a job. So I was like, all right. And prior to that, I'd never really held a knife before, so like I remember my first day, like the other cook had to show me like how to slice an orange. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But I learned to love cooking before I learned to love food. And then it took me, it took me a long time to really sort of discover what food is really sort of my food and what flavors speak to me, and sort of come back to the food of my childhood. So, which is, in some ways it's Japanese American flavors, but it's also like a lot of the flavors of New York, especially in that era. So it's like my dad was super into Chinese food, and so like a lot of the Chinese American food and the Cantonese food that we'd go out to Chinatown looking for the best dry fried beef chow fun and things like that. So like a lot of those flavors, the foods of New England. So shellfish, oysters. Like my dad loves fishing. That's his number one thing. And so we would go on little charter boats out of Rockaway Beach, like the Russian charter boats where you go and like catch bluefish in the Hudson River, or we'd go up to Boston and go out charter fishing for like flounder or and these days my dad has like a little boat that he takes out for striped bass and tuna. So that New England seafood.
Is he in New England?
Yeah, he lives in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
he's like actually Boston.
Cambridge, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but he's got a little boat, the Charlestown Marina. So he goes out for stripers and bluefish. Sorry, stripers and tuna. Yeah. So my flavors are really sort of New England, Japanese, and like Chinese American and New York things.
Yeah.
pizza, Chinese food, some Mexican food, that kind of stuff. And those are all the things that really speak to me.
Yeah, me too. I love all of that too. Is what's an ingredient that you overuse and you just
An ingredient I overuse. I mean, I probably put, soy sauce in things where you wouldn't typically find it. MSG. I, so on my kitchen counter, I keep kosher salt. So growing up, MSG was not like a bad thing. Like my grandmother had had a salt shaker and an MSG shaker. And we used the MSG for certain dishes. But like on my kitchen counter now, I have kosher salt. I've got like a fancy finishing salt. I've got a
like Malden or
yeah, it
good
varies.
crunchy
Whatever I
stuff.
have, yeah, Malden might be Malden, might be Fleur de Sel. These days it's usually Jacobson sea salt, which is
Jacobson, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. They're local, right?
yep,
Seattle.
yeah,
Yeah, good stuff.
and an 8-to-1 mixture of kosher salt and MSG.
Okay.
That I think of just as like
By weight or by volume?
by weight.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right.
And so it's just like my if I'm seasoning a soup, if I'm seasoning like a chicken breast, if I'm seasoning a steak, whatever it is, like if I I use it the way most people would use just regular salt, and it just gives it like a little bit of extra umami.
Next question. You can only go eat out at one restaurant for the rest of your life. So anytime you want to go eat out,
I mean, I'm gonna use the same answers before, and for me, the only food I could eat every meal of every day and not be sick of it is pizza, like New York pizza. So it would probably be Sacco Pizza, because it's like my childhood pizza joint, and it's cheap, it's satisfying. Like I love the atmosphere there. Like I have fond memories of that place. One of my early memories is they had a Street Fighter 2 machine in the back of that shop. I don't know if you remember Street Fighter 2, but it was like a console machine. And it was behind the oven. So if you were playing on the right joystick and you got too into it, like your elbow would hit the back of the oven. And so like anybody who played on the right joystick would get burns on the back of their elbow. And there's just like a little taped on sign that said hot, but you could lean against it and like get third-degree burns. But I remember I was playing in there once when I was around 11 or 12 years old. And I was playing this like older kid. And I was being cheap and using guile and like just like cheap wins, and he
what,
said,
like constant foot sweep back
where you just you do like a backwards, you do like a ducking block, and then if they get close to you, you can like either do a series of small jabs and then walk up to them and throw them, and then you can defend against jumps by doing your sonic kick and all that stuff, your flip kick. But he told me, like, if I do that again, I'm going to kick your ass in real life. And so I just did it again, and then he turned and punched me, and then there was like a little commotion going on. But then Joe, one of the owners there, he came and kicked the kid out, and like made sure I was okay. It was just like one of those places where you felt like, okay, like he saw me 2 times a week. He knew who I was. I ate pizza there all the time, and like he just like, he was like a cool dude who just like stood up for me. He like made sure that this other kid like wasn't waiting for me out on the street when I was leaving. And so yeah, it's a good neighborhood joint, solid
awesome,
pizza.
dude. So what's a dish that satisfies your soul, but you have to cook it because the ritual and the joy brings you back to center?
I mean, for me, growing up, my favorite dish was my mom's version of mapo tofu. So mapo tofu traditionally is a Sichuan dish. It has like the traditional version of it has that mala flavor profile, that spicy, numbing, hot flavor profile. The version, it came to Japan in the 70s. So it was actually Iron Chef Ken Shinichi. His father is the guy who brought Sichuan food to Japan. And when it came to Japan, it sort of evolved to suit Japanese taste. So rather than having that heavily fermented broad bean and chili flavor, it had a much milder, a little bit of heat, but not a ton of heat. There was none of the numbingness that you find in Sichuan food. And so the version my mom used to make for us when we were kids, she made it with Japanese silken tofu, with ground beef. We lived in Morningside Heights, which at the time was like a meat packing area in New York. And so she would buy beef from a guy who would like steal it from the back of the butcher shop and sell it at the red light, on 125th and Riverside. Like one guy would clean your windows and one guy would come to your window with a cooler of meat. And so she would make it with that ground meat, that ground beef, silken tofu. She'd flavor it with sake, mirin, soy sauce, so like real simple Japanese flavors. And then usually what she would actually do is she would take that ground beef and make dumpling filling out of it, with whatever frozen vegetables she had in the fridge. So sometimes it was like frozen spinach, sometimes it was frozen corn, whatever. And then whatever leftover dumpling filling there was, she would use that as the base for the mapo tofu.
Okay.
But these days, I make it because for me, it's a comfort food. It's that texture of the tofu, that really easy sort of umami, slightly sweet flavor from those Japanese flavors, the soy sauce and the mirin, the sweet and savory. And then it's also like the dish that I know my kids will eat if I make it.
I was hoping that this was going to be the dish that you shared.
All right.
Because I want to eat it.
All right.
It's kind of like a bucket list thing for me.
Nice.
To get to eat your cooking.
Well, we'll do it. Yeah.
And this is definitely one of my favorite dishes. But yeah, so I can't wait to eat this. I want to give you your flowers in person while we're here together. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. No, that means a lot to me, because helping people cook is the reason I do it. Yeah, I want people to be able to, for me, the point of cooking is really, once you're past sort of the basic subsistence level, it's the goal of cooking is to share yourself with other people and to get people enjoying their time in each other's company. And so teaching people to cook, for me, it's really like, it means that you're going to, there's more people in the world out there who are going to be sharing joy, sharing themselves, sharing good conversation, sharing understanding with other people. And I think that's what cooking is really about. So yeah, it means a lot for you to tell me that's what those are the things that you got out of the work I've done.
So beautifully said and spoken, even in the moment as well. Thank you, brother.
Oh, thank you. Should we cook?
Yeah, let's cook. I'll read my little, I'll say my little outro. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Repertoire is part of Heritage Radio Network, where we're on a mission to build a more sustainable and equitable food future. And your engagement is what keeps the lights on. So if you dug today's episode, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. The Good Food Movement is all about community, and together we can make a meaningful impact.